Alright. Well, occurring to the fact that most kiddie shows have turned up dead ends, one show, Candle Cove, has made an impact here. I made myself hunt down whatever cast remained of the show, regardless of their fear. I wanted to know everything about this show, but in the process I came to understand that there hid something much darker aboard it than just what I was told and just what I've heard. I've posted some of my thoughts into the page at points to have a feel for the interviewees here. I note that those being interviewed are indicated by the quotation marks around them. You may notice that a censor will appear. I did that so no one may want to bombard me with questions and such. It's a privacy thing. I'm sorry if offended the readers. With that, I present to you this page in the lore. Candle Cove. Experiences. Tales of Laughingstock. Day 1. My first knowing of the Candle Cove lore came out on the Net Nostalgia forum back some time. However, many of the episodes have never been found, and many of the props are either long gone or spread out over the world. However, after mention of the show, I had to dig further into it. For you guys that may remember me from the Net Nostalgia forum, I was the one called Jared 2005, if I remember right. Now, I discovered over my round trip was something dark residing within the studios itself. The show, originally called Pirate Place, was loosely based on an old, quite lost story called The Knickerbocker's Tale from 1767. It was about a little Irish boy arriving to a land of pirates to find his way back home. The story's writer, a man believed to be named Colin Colcrey, vanished into the dark. Stories about it say that he was a madman who married well and had a daughter who vanished without a trace near his home. This inspired him to write the story, and shortly after, he was found dead by his wife. The story was lost for several years, until 1970, when a local television station in Ashland found the rights to the story and converted it into a children's series. I managed to find some of the studio's workers, but none of them were able to tell me about it. Well, there was one. Day 2. Asking this woman to nearly relive her nightmare of 1971 was nearly impossible, but thankfully she decided to do so, reluctantly anyways. Okay, Mrs. I'm not comfortable giving my last name or my first. Okay then, mind if I call you Jane? No, I don't. Okay then, well, Jane, I understand you had a part in the kiddie show Candle Cove, correct? Set designer. Well, part of it. I helped in the construction of the Laughingstock and many of the characters as well. I see. Was it a good experience? Oh, very. It was a great one. Until towards the end of the show itself. How so? Well, that damn Grimes. That's what it was. Grimes? Emerson Grimes, the show's director? Is there another Grimes you know about on series? I'm sorry, that was just my phone. Let's get back to the story. Now, as soon as I said that, she lit a cigarette, something that, from her appearance and the fear of Grimes foretold, I actually expected from her. Well, how did he manage to scare you? How did he? He was a nut job, a loony. He forced a 5-year-old girl to near heat stroke, changed scripts. Everything was fine until this show grew darker and darker. How dark was it getting? Now this I kinda knew about, the infamous question to the skin taker and his answer to Janice. When a skeleton named the skin taker proclaims that the reason for his mouth to move weird is for the grinding of your skin, you will have some problems.
Grimes was insane, but The Last Straw was the last episode in the series.
I knew about this and moved on to her designs of the show. She explained that it was a damned kiddie show that turned into a puppet show from hell overnight. She wanted to end the conversation, but not before I asked about any surviving members of the crew.
There were a few of them still around, but you'll have to find them on your own.
Day 3. I did, however, manage to find Jodi Silver, who played Janice on the show, now an adult of about 45. I believe that this was the child that the woman I was previously talking about, Jane, mentioned. She resides with her husband, Damon Lewis, and her 2 kids. If you see her now, she has lost all of that childhood spunk that she had on the show. She works as a writer of pirate stories and haunted mysteries. I managed to record, on tape, an interview with her. Here's basically how it went. Are you Miss Jodi Silver? Why, I haven't been called that for years. Yes, I'm Jodi, but people call me Jodi Lewis nowadays. Oh, I'm sorry about the mix-up. I'm writing a book on an old kiddie show that you used to be on. Jesus Christ. Please tell me you're joking. It was here that I noticed she seemed agitated at the sound of a book being written on something that she was trying so hard to put behind her. It's no joke, Mrs. Lewis. Well, I warn you that you are a total nutcase for doing it. That show has given me bad dreams. It's ruined my childhood. I've even had therapy because of it. I don't wish to speak about it. Please, Joey, just one interview. That's all I'm asking for. Just one. Hell, if you have to go through therapy again for it, I'll personally pay out of pocket. It was here she stood long and hard. Christ, fine. Fine. Meet me here for an interview. With that, she handed me a card with her address on it. I promised she wouldn't regret this, but I had a feeling she already was. Day 4. Hello, Mrs. Lewis. Well, hi there. Come on in. Her house wasn't big, but not small either. I could tell that she had little ones running around, from the sounds of kiddie shows floating faintly from the television set, and many toys scattered about. It was like trying to walk through a forest of mousetraps without setting one off. Eventually we got to the small dining area of the home, with a good outlook over the water. A nice place to dream dreams. Okay, now about the show. Well, it started out as a dream come true. I was a huge fan of shows like Jumbo Circus, Sunshine City, and Fisherman Fred, and I really wanted to be on a kiddie show. I got my wish when I heard about the studio was looking for a young girl to play the role of Janice for their new show. And sure, there were many little girls who wanted the role so badly, so I did my best to win the studio over, which happened. I loved the idea of the show. I did my very best to do everything right. Turned out you should be careful of what you wish for. Why is that now? I really don't want to tell you, but I must. You see, on set, some changes started happening. Grimes would change scripts. Things seemed to be a bit scary. And for the first episode, it just seemed so mean, and such was odd for a kid's show. And then that horrible last episode. What episode? The last episode of the first season? Wow, you must really need to brush up on your history of this. There were 2 seasons of the show. The final episode of the 2nd season was the worst ever. I attentively and carefully asked her to tell me. Screams! Just screams. Everyone's screaming. And that sick man Grimes, destroying the sets. He told everyone to just scream loudly. Many did. it got to the point where one of the actors, a man who played the skin taker, started to bleed. He nearly choked on his blood. I bawled my eyes out. It was there she started to cry, all those memories coming back to her. She asked me to stop, and I did. I explained I was sorry to bring back these memories. I never meant that was my intention. I remember the skin taker. He hung, his head tilted and low, his jaw hanging from one socket, and the parts of his arms torn off. Day 5. I left to go find Michael Cullen, who was the man that Jodi apparently referenced when talking about the skin taker. When I came across a yard sale, I know, creepypasta-ish, right? I asked them about some old recorded tapes I saw, and they said they were mostly shows for their son when he was young. I noticed that some of them were actually from Candle Cove. Although they were very smudged and probably in horrible condition, I bought the videos from them anyways. Now this is probably here where you would expect me to say that I popped in the tape and evil shit happened, blah blah yada yada, Satan appeared, threatened to rape my soul, and Pirate Percy came at me in a dream as a cannibalistic demon. Something like a creepypasta-ish event, right? That's not the case, folks. I popped it in, and sure enough, static. Just like I remember. Like I told Skyshale on the forums. But eventually it came on. Sure, it was jumpy, and it was a static juncture, but it was the show nonetheless. It was an odd first show, being that Janice was made fun of so horribly and that Percy would proclaim for her not to kill him. And the thought of kidnapping on the show was just an odd tidbit to be in there. But it had to continue, sadly. I didn't make it past episode 2. Day 8. There is a gap due to a break for a while. I pursued my interest in finding any contact with crew members or cast member aside from Jane and Jodi. I managed to find a Mr. Walter Shay, who was the stagehand on the show. I managed to write this letter. Dear Mr. Shay, my name is, and I am writing a book entitled Candle Cove Experiences, Tales of the Laughingstock. I am interviewing whatever remaining crew and cast there are from the show. I was wondering if we could arrange a possible meeting with one another or an actual interview. Of course, if that is all right with you, I can be contacted at the Nohoma Motel address. Thank you for your time. I received a letter sometimes later. Dear, you may be the dumbest person I have ever met. Why in the hell would you dare to bring up such a subject that has haunted me and everyone else on that show? Do you know the absolute tragedy that has accumulated from that? But it's also a way to get things off my chest from it. Fine, I'll meet you for an interview. But what I say about that show is 100% truth, eyewitness. You must not judge what I say. If you do, I'll make sure that your journey will end with me. Enclosed is a card for where to meet me and at what time. I'm not a snobbish man, but I won't do this again. Sincerely, Walter Shay. I met with Walter Shay later on that week, having to time it right. I left after day 10 for Tulsa. It took some time to watch the other episodes, but I managed. They did seem darker, as Jane had stated before. Some of them were getting hard to watch, but I have to keep watching. The infamous To Grind Your Skin episode came on. That was the worst. It's hard to watch. It's one thing to keep a shitty model TV that makes every program like watching something from the 70s. It's another when the damn tape just keeps jumping and staticking out every 2 minutes. I felt like those people trying to watch porn on their old boxes, if you know what I mean, the scramblers. Anyhow, I got to meet him where he wanted. He came in on a wheelchair, explaining how he was paralyzed. Okay now, Mr. Shay. You said you had some information?
Yeah,
That whole damn show was a cuss. What'd you mean by that? If you could only dream of what I mean, it's exactly how I say it. That show is a cuss. I don't understand. Really, I don't. I broke my leg on that show when a damn ladder fell off and smashed on my leg after I fell. I felt something when I hit, like something pushed that ladder down. Then the episodes got darker. There were 2 episodes that never aired in season 2. Those 2 were like the worst of the worst. What happened? That Grimes in one episode had his Janice, implied of course, to be cannibalized by the skin taker in a dream. Another one was to reveal that Nathan had been kidnapped and turned into a part of a cape for that bastard. Hell, Grimes wanted to fucking have Janice killed and skinned alive on camera. The end of that series was to have continued with Melrose winding up in the world looking for Janice. Me and the cast had to make sure that never happened, so we shot those ideas down every time. This pissed him off. I think that's why he did that final episode, you know? The screaming episode? You mean he wanted to show a little girl being skinned alive? Yes. That fucker's a monster too. He didn't vanish. I will tell you something that I've never told anyone. Go on. After we finished filming that episode, I went back to get something of mine. I saw Grimes pleading to the set pieces as if they were all alive. He was pleading that he did his job right, and he made sure. He started ripping his hair and his teeth out, screaming, trying to get whatever it was away from killing him. He fell backwards and hung himself on a cord. The sound of his neck snapping, God, it still haunts me. They said that he just vanished. You're stating that he lost it and accidentally killed himself? Yes! Now, I knew something horrible did happen. It was freaking me out, and now I wanted to stop. But I had to know what happened to Grimes. They never found the body. I got rid of it. I couldn't let them think that he had just wanted to make things happen to himself. I had to do something. Out of the decency of my being, at least. What did you do? I buried him. I took his old lanky body out into the woods behind the studio and buried him. I told myself that there was nothing to fear but fear itself. But there was something there. I walked back through the studio and I felt something eerie present in the skin taker puppet, like it was watching me. I got out of there as quickly as I could. Sometime later, that damn final episode aired, and I will never forget what I saw. It was horrible. I was afraid of the show now. What was lying ahead of the episodes for me? I had some more stops to go to, but I advised myself that if things kept getting too deep, I would have to stop there and work with what I have. Day 19. It's been hard to sleep, and I keep having the same nightmare. It's the skin taker coming at me, threatening to grind my skin. It's hard to wake up to just static because I can hear that fucking theme song in my head every time I do. I gave up a little, but I had to keep going. I made a list of people who claimed to have items from the series. Some proved to be idiots who made the items themselves. Indications were of modern look to them. However, there were some who did have the items. The items that I've gotten so far are listed. one of the skin taker's glass eyes, the arm of Pirate Percy, the hat, albeit somewhat in tatters, of the skin taker, one of the eyes of Horrible Horace, and a tooth belonging to the Laughingstock. The most unique item I found, and I swear to you, I found this one at a house in Missouri. The original owner was a man named Kyle Bartlett. His daughter, Judith, was nice enough to show me a part of the collection he had. He had the original skin taker head. Now, I thought it was a fake since the jaw was intact, whereas Jane stated that the jaw was partially torn off. As it turns out, Kyle was one of the crewmen on the show. He loved the skin taker as a villain. When he found that it was destroyed, he put much time into inserting the jaw back in its place. I asked to have it, but she denied that request. I did see that it was missing one eye and its famed hat. I brought these items back and put them inside by myself. The head was now complete, but she allowed no photography or video to be made, stating that her father wouldn't want his favorite to be spoiled. She sounded like a mother to a child. I had to keep up. My search led me to New York, where one Mr. Michael Cullen lived. The very same Michael Cullen who voiced the skin taker in the show. The same Michael Cullen whose son, Trevor Cullen, was murdered in the fall of 1981. Meeting him was hard. He wanted nothing to do with this, but I had to interview him. I really did. He refused for some time until he decided to. Hello, Mr. Cullen.
Yeah, hi there.
I'm sorry about this.
You must not be really sorry to make a man who lost his son 10 years after that goddamn episode aired to talk about this fucking show. The nightmares still haunt me. Every night, I can see the damn episode playing in my head.
I'm sorry about your son and nightmares. He took a shot of Jack Daniels and said,
Don't be.
It's not your fault this happened. My wife left me 3 years ago after she passed on.
I had a dream the very night it happened. It was the skin taker, holding a knife, chasing him and brutally murdering him. It's odd that he was in a neighborhood while a local gang known as the Walking Skulls just so happened to be in. But they didn't use knives in their crimes, so it was someone else.
I never knew that.
Never asked me to tell you, and that damn episode screwed my voice up, which is why it sounds so different than how I should.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Understand. You see, Grimes wanted the show to be dark. I thought he was nuts. I didn't want to do the grind your skin episode at all since I read that damn script. He threatened to fire me and I couldn't do that. I had a wife and a kid on the way. I couldn't lose work like that, so I did it. Unfortunately.
I see. What happened the night the last episode premiered? He sighed, took another shot of the Jack, and he told me.
After that damn episode, I got the hell out of there. I went directly home to get all that I could. I grabbed my wife and my infant son and I got the hell out of town. I left that damn place with dignity and got to a nearby township. I had the misfortune to be in the hospital in time for that final fucking episode to air. I had no choice but to watch it, and I regret doing so.
Oh dear, I'm sorry to hear that. If you want to, I can leave here. We could finish if you'd like to.
Sounds good. I'm sorry. I just can't do this. I'm just sorry.
I left him there, crying, actually regretting that I left him. I wish I hadn't. Day 27. I was reading a newspaper and I skimmed the obituaries. I'm fortunate to say that Mr. Michael Cullen committed suicide some time ago. He shot himself in the head. He left a suicide note. The NYPD stated that it was a letter to me. It had my name and address on it.
Dear I'm sorry to announce that by the time you read this, I'll be gone. It's not your fault, but the dreams came back hard after the interview. It's much harder for me to deal with it, but last night's dream was the final straw. The skin taker came to me, and in that damned hat, stating that my son has a special place. I saw part of my boy's face in the upper right side of the hat, looking at me with a glassy kind of stare. A single tear rolled down his face, and I heard him screaming in agony. It broke my heart. I can't take the dreams anymore. I can't handle it, and I want you to understand that you mustn't go on. Jodi told me about your interview with her, and she is planning on coming to New York for the funeral. I told her that she should forget about it, but since you came around, it's been harder for her to forget. I have to cease this. I'm sorry. Really, I am. Sincerely, Michael Cullen. Because of this letter, the death of this man, and the nightmares I've trudged up, I'm ceasing this project and going home. It's unfortunate I have to quit this, being that I was far ahead in it, but it's the right thing to do.
Day 30. My name is... He was a close friend of mine, and he asked for me to post this here. He recently killed himself, or it was a homicide, I'm not so sure. The police said he was working on something, but when the interviewed were questioned, they never said a word, because they knew better than to rat him out and trudge up more nightmares for themselves. He was a wonderful man in life. His girlfriend, who is expecting a baby sometime within the year, is broken up about this. I'm sorry to say that in his message to me, he wrote that he met with one final person after the Michael Cullen interview. He stated that it was a man named Adrian Grimes, Emerson Grimes' nephew. He asked me to put the interview on here. This is the interview made by the telephone. Is this Adrian Grimes?
This is he. May I ask what this is about?
This is about the show Candle Cove.
That show.
Yes.
Look, I don't know who this is, but my uncle has been dead for years. His body was never found, and I swear to you that if this is some prank, it's not funny.
It's not a prank at all, I swear.
Look, you want to know about that show? My uncle was a sick man. He told me about it, and I watched it. And I will tell you that every single person that was on that show has their own place in it. I, however, want nothing to do with it. I got to see the making of one episode, all right. One episode. It never aired, and I hope it never will either.
Season 2, meaning either episodes 5 or 6.
What the hell are you talking about? No, this happened after the season ended. A new director, can't remember his name. It was supposed to be the season 3 starter. I was invited to be on the show as a character, and my father took advantage of it. Since then, I hate all the show, because my fucked up uncle was a part of it. Now leave me alone!